Attention. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming today. It's not easy to get out a crowd of people on a Friday afternoon in the middle of summer on a beautiful day, but for this cause, it's very fitting and it's really humbling, and I'm very honored to see so many of our veterans here today. And I want to thank you all for coming out, and I want to thank the media for coming out again. I know it's a hot day to be coming up to Woonsocket, but clearly it's an important day for us as we move forward with our response to the freedom from religion's demand that we take down the Place Jalbert monument. Before we get on with the comments and the release, we put together a brief video presentation that explains the history of the monument, and we're going to be putting this out on the web and basically trying to draw as much attention to our cause as possible. We'll have with us later on some comments from our attorney and constitutional expert with regard to this matter, Joseph Larisa, who has been very gracious in working with us on this matter. And then we will also hear from Jeanne Budnick from the Woonsocket War Memorial Committee, and also some comments from the United Veterans Council. And I want to thank them all for being here as well today. So without further ado, I just want to thank you once again, and we'll move on with the video presentation.
Confederate banner battle in Princeton now says the Woonsocket Memorial needs to go, claiming it's unconstitutional. The Woonsocket Memorial needs to go. An emotional rally in support of a controversial war memorial.
Thank you very much. I want to take a moment just now to thank, we have representatives from the Jolliker family, Jeanne Jolliker, and his
Anita.
Anita that is here, and I want to thank them for being here today as well. When we received the notification sometime back from the Freedom from Religion Foundation, I was rather surprised by the letter at first because, quite honestly, I think like most people, I've driven by the Place Jolliker Monument hundreds and hundreds of times over my lifetime, and quite honestly didn't really know what it was about. Quite honestly, I thought it was a firefighter's monument. And as I got the letter and began to look into the request and the demand to take it down, I started looking into the history of the monument and became overwhelmed by the information that we saw here on the video today. And it became all the more meaningful to me as an individual and made clear to me the importance that this monument has to our city as a community. Not only as a spirit of community, but as a spirit of a community that recognizes and appreciates the sacrifice of our veterans. And that sacrifice became all the more compelling when you learn of Bernadette Gagne, that lost all 3 sons to the war. When we hear of Saving Private Ryan, this is the real thing. And it happened right here. And when you learn that Mrs. Gagne didn't allow herself to be crushed by the news each time she received the telegram of another son being lost, she dedicated the rest of her life to the veterans of our community and to the Gold Star mothers who also lost children. She died at 96 years old after dedicating a whole life to those that served our country. So when I received the letter asking that we take this monument down, and then looking back in retrospect, understanding what that monument was all about, it made clear what the response had to be from this community. And as the news spread of the demand, I saw something that I haven't seen in some time. This community that has been racked with financial strife, arguing over so many different things, and trying to find our way through a crisis that we haven't seen in a long time, pulled together. We saw people like Pepin Lumber that started making crosses for the front of their business. And people walked in and said, where can I get a cross like that? So they made them one too. And then somebody else came in and they made them one. And then one more and one more. They've sold about 1,000 crosses now. And they're up over all over the state. And I see people putting flags on their lawns again. And I see people calling, people that have been very upset with me over so many things are calling me, telling me, hang in there, you're doing a good job, and that means an awful lot. So, when we received the letter, second letter from the FFRF, I don't think perhaps our message to them when we had 2,000 people gather in that rally, or when I debated their co-president on the year, I guess that message wasn't loud enough, and they asked for a formal legal response. Throughout all of this, I had contacted Joseph Larisa, who is an attorney that specializes in constitutional law, and he's been advising us throughout all of this. And Joe was very gracious in working, and as much as attorneys, they do this for a living, Joe has put in far more than he's ever billed for, and he continues to do this, and has basically promised us that he will not work to a point where the city has to pay tax dollars into defending this case. At the same point, we've been contacted by a number of organizations, national organizations that have offered to defend this case should it become a formal legal challenge, that they will offer us legal support for free. And one of those organizations, the Liberty Defense Fund, has been very supportive and has been assisting in this process as we've moved along. And if this does become a legal challenge, I expect that they will be on board with us to assist us in this effort. At the same point, we've had people come together, veterans, residents, neighbors, friends, that put together the Woonsocket War Memorial Committee. And they came to me and asked what they could do, because they wanted to raise money, because the other thing that I think most people found as this memorial became more and more prominent was how it had decayed over the years. It had sat there in a parking lot that basically it was rotting away, and these people came together and raised money, and we have a representative from that group that will be here today to address that. At the same point, I've been meeting with the veterans who are also part of this and want to make sure that everybody understands the meaning behind this monument, because this monument sat there for 60 years. After William Jolliker died in the war, the city residents and the veterans came together after the war and asked the city council to designate a number of squares throughout the city in honor of veterans who had given their lives. And the intersection of Cumberland Street and Hamlet Avenue was rightly named as Place Jolliker. Not long after that, 1921, Field Marshal Foch, as you saw in the video, he was the Grand Commander of the Allied forces in World War I. He came here to the United States and specifically came to Woonsocket because Woonsocket led the first contingent of soldiers from the United States that went to the Woonsocket offensive, which was one of the most decisive battles at this point. And he said at the time that Woonsocket soldiers were very welcomed and were very instrumental in that battle because they spoke French. And he came here amid the throngs of thousands of people lining the streets. They said that they were holding flares and lit up the streets as if it were daytime. Soldiers stood at attention along the sides of the road as he rode by. Groups of children gathered in song on the steps of St. Anne's Church and sang French anthems as he rode by. And when he ended up at Place Jolliker, he dedicated that plot for William Jolliker. Years later, as World War II rages on, and the tragedy that fell upon the Gagne family came upon them, afterward, veterans and citizens again came together, and through the veterans groups petitioned the city to be able to construct a monument fitting for the soldiers who had given their lives. And it was those private veterans organizations and cities that constructed the monument that we see today, 60 years ago. It has sat there ever since. In 1952, though, when it was built, it was in the middle of a very busy intersection. But in 1955, as many of you locals know, the flood came, caused enormous amounts of damage throughout the city, and it caused the redirection of the streets in that intersection. And as such, the monument ended up in the middle of the parking lot of the fire headquarters, and there it's sat ever since then. If there's anything that I think we can draw from this, I'm actually thankful that this challenge was brought upon us. Because, first of all, I would never have known about the Gagnes as much as I do. And I don't think a lot of people would have. And I don't think that this community would have pulled together as it has over something so important. So, that being the case, we received a second demand notice asking again that the monument be removed and requesting a formal legal opinion and our response. As I said in the video and I say again, this monument was dedicated to heroes. William Jolliker, Louis Gagne, Alexander Gagne, and Henry Gagne. This is as close to a gravestone as their families have here on the United States soil. We will defend this monument no matter what. So that being said, I appreciate your patience. This is just an important time, and I want people to understand the magnitude of why this monument is so important to us, and why I would ask that you spread this story and let people know what this is about. The city set up a defense fund. We've raised about $18,500 so far, and we have a website set up as well, and you can go to the city's website and donate directly there. So spread the word. There's a website that was mentioned in the video that was set up by a volunteer. It's at ourmonument.webs.com, and there's some information about the monument there and an opportunity to click onto the city's website to contribute. And that being said, I just want to thank all of you for coming and understanding and being part of this today. So without further ado, I'd like to call upon a good friend to us and our attorney that's been helping on this, Joseph Larisa.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you everyone for being here today. When the letter from the FFRF came in on April 14th, I saw it on April 14th. I got a call from your mayor, and we didn't know what we were in for then, but he said, Joe, do you know anything about these First Amendment issues? And yeah, I've dealt with them before, and we sent the letter out. And it was unfortunate, considering what you might expect from a letter from a party in the First Amendment area. The letter didn't mention the word memorial. It talked about a cross. It didn't even show the memorial. It had a snow-covered base and a big white cross. And it talked about the cross being illegal, unconstitutional, that it's an establishment of religion. It cited cases where cities putting up crosses have to take them down. And it even cited a portion of a Supreme Court opinion, a portion of it by Justice Kennedy, where he said that it's very clear that if a mayor erected a cross on top of City Hall, it would be an endorsement of Christianity and should be taken down. All of that was interesting, but it has nothing to do, as we now know, with this war memorial. I called it in the memo, it's the shoot first, ask questions later letter. Boy, did the mayor put a cross up on City Hall and now we have to take it down? Excuse me, of course not. But the details of why I'm convinced that we have very little, in fact no constitutional difficulty with this war memorial, and we'll be able to defend it whether it ends here, the district court, the First Circuit, or if it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, are contained in the memo that we have copies of for anybody who wishes to see. The trouble with their whole theory is this is not just a cross, this is not a place where people go worship Christianity or God. This is a war memorial. And from its inception, had the FFRF been bothered to ask or done their own historical research, they would see that this was constructed with private money, this was constructed privately, and the whole purpose, effect, and intent and context of this war memorial was to honor those who lost their lives in the war, and in particular, the Native sons who we saw in that video. It had nothing to do with church services or worship or a cross there for an establishment of religion by the city. In fact, the council that authorized it in 1952 authorized private veterans groups to construct a memorial. It didn't even mention a cross. It was up to them what the memorial contained. And historical research through the years show there were no religious services at this memorial. There certainly were memorial services to honor our veterans, but it's completely divorced from any type of endorsement of Christianity. So it makes this matter completely different than anything that the FFRF was talking about in their first letter or even their second letter. Now, how do we know all this? How do we know it's completely divorced from Christianity? Well, let me say a few words about your mayor because he won't say them. He has spent countless hours on this issue. I always tease him that he's practicing law without a license, but I also tease him that he's a lot better at doing it than a lot of lawyers that I know. But he amazed me here because he's not just a lawyer on this matter, he's a historian. This tremendous video that you think might be a commercial for a candidate, you know who put that together? Your mayor put that together. We had to dig through the archives and find all of this stuff, which was actually great to do, and it really showed what our veterans meant to this city, this state, and this country in World War I and World War II. I mean, we had to go through all of that stuff, and it wasn't just me doing it, it was the mayor doing it. Every line, every page of the Woonsocket Call, and every amount of that history. Your mayor has been there from the beginning. So when he says that we will defend this to the end, you have no better advocate. When he says it, that's what's going to be done here. So the bottom line is the FFRF is all wet, as my memo says. The Supreme Court has held that there definitely needs to be clarity in the First Amendment area, including the Establishment Clause. But when you've got a case where all of the facts are on our side, that this was a war memorial that had a cross on top, privately constructed, dedicated, not there as a City of Woonsocket endorsement of religion, not put on the top of City Hall, just a cross. There's a base here. There's a war memorial. That's part of the war memorial, and there's a history behind it. And let me say a couple of other words about the mayor. There were calls at the beginning to give up. A lot of calls, you may remember. Let's just move it. Let's try to give it away to a private entity, which would have had its own problems if you tried to do that according to some precedent. But the mayor said, no, we won't be moving it, we won't be giving it away. It stays where it is, as it is, and hopefully for another 60, 100, or 200 years to honor those veterans. So hopefully when the FFRF finally learns the facts of this case and reads the memo about the history, and maybe they can watch this video on the web, the case will end here. If it doesn't and it goes to district court, I will be defending it with the help of outside groups. And if it goes beyond that and they want to appeal to the First Circuit Court, we will be defending it there. And if it goes to the Supreme Court of the United States, we will be defending it. What the FFRF does a lot of times is send these letters, they have several $100,000 in their budget, to cities across the nation. Anywhere there's any type of religious symbol, they just say take it down. One of their latest cases was to try to get In God We Trust gone. They lost in 4 circuit courts, but they tried to bring that right here in the First Circuit, and they lost the case, and they petitioned the Supreme Court. In their view, any religious symbol anywhere in any government place must go, which the Supreme Court has never held and is completely contrary to the traditions and the holdings of the Supreme Court throughout the years. So, but that's where they're coming from. And they try to bully, and a lot of times, and I've seen it, I've done some research on them, they send a letter, especially to a government agency, and the government agency immediately complies, unless there are groups and individuals who step up and say, not here, not in our town. And that's what's happened here. So they need to know that due to the graciousness that the mayor's talked about with this fund, that I committed to the mayor and the council long ago that we're in this till the end. If it ends here, great. There'll be actually plenty of money left over. If it goes to the district court, the defense of this will not exceed the amount of the fund. If it goes to the First Circuit, there's not going to be any taxpayer dollars used. And if somehow it gets up in the Supreme Court, this town is protected too. So we're in this to the end. We'll protect this to the end, and the taxpayers won't be on the hook, and the veterans and this memorial, as the mayor has promised, will be defended.
Thank you very much, Joe. Joe gave me a lot of credit for a lot of this, but I have to mention a few people that I really have to show some appreciation for. First of all is my wife. She and my children were at the library doing a lot of work. And also I want to thank Lorraine Corey and Yvette Ayotte. These two are great people that came to me and said, anything you need, we'll be there to help you. So after just hanging up the phone with Joe Larisa, I told him, I said, I need you to go to the library and look through every Woonsocket call from 1952 forward and make sure that you never find a religious service being held at the place Jolliker site. And they did. And they were at the library day in and day out. So much so that when my wife went down to get some research done, she gets there and she sees both of the machines taken up at the library. And she's thinking, my God, I'm stuck now. So she finally went over and she realized who it was and that we're working on the same project. So I want to thank all of them for their work. It really means an awful lot to me in this community. So thank you. At this point, I'd like to call up from the United Veterans Council a good friend of ours and representative of all the veterans organizations here in the city, Mr. Ernie Boivin.
As he said, my name is Ernie Boivin. I am currently the Vice President of the United Veterans Council. Mr. Richard W. Schatz, President of the United Veterans Council in Woonsocket, offers his apology for not being here in person at this important press conference. He's currently attending a National Veterans Convention where he serves on the 3rd District, which represents Rhode Island, Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, as well as attending National Executive Committee. The United Veterans Council of Woonsocket represents veterans organizations here in the city. For decades, the United Veterans Council has been leading force in veterans affairs in this city of Woonsocket. We, as officers of the United Veterans Council, have taken an oath to see to the well-being and the answer to the causes of our veteran community. At this time, I would like to thank Mayor Fontaine, the members of the City Council, and the City of Woonsocket for helping our organization in keeping alive all the memorials of this great city, and to all of you who have helped us financially with your time and donations. I would also like to thank you, the War Memorial Committee chaired by Jeanne Budnick for their efforts in the revitalization of the World War I Jalbert and Gagne Memorial located near the fire station on Cumberland Hill Road. With their efforts and contributions, that Veterans Memorial would not be in the best shape it has seen in many years. I don't know if everybody has gone by and seen it lately. It's better than when they first put it on. Thank you. It is also on their agenda to find and replace some of the memorials that were honored or were removed or lost in this community. From my understanding, there's a few memorials that have been misplaced, and there's some effort to find them and replace them. The memorial was weathered and obscured by the site when the city changed the traffic pattern and the new Hamlet Avenue Bridge was reconstructed after the flood in 1955. Now this memorial has been brought back into the limelight due to an individual who thought in their mind it was objectionable. Maybe if that individual had kept quiet, we would not be here today defending it. The United Veterans Council, working with the City of Woonsocket, has had in the past been responsible for the War and Veterans Memorials here in the city. Like all of you, we as an organization have fallen on tough economic times, and our funds to keep these monuments cared for has been difficult. Helping veterans and their families come first, and all other things get put on board. In the past, when a fundraising event took place by veteran organizations in our city, we had funds to do things and to help our fellow veterans. Today, we have an aging veteran population who come from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and not able to get out there like they used to. And with the economics the way they are, we have to get out there more often to get the same results as years before. Today's armed forces veterans have to worry about keeping a roof over their heads, food on the table, and finding employment. They don't have time to join a service organization and helping us out. Hopefully in the future they will. The memorials we now have in this great city are our way in remembering those veterans who gave the ultimate sacrifice. We now have to look into the future and maintain what is there in the way it was originally dedicated to remember those veterans. We need to fight to preserve that, no matter what someone may feel is objectionable in their eyes. In the future, when we memorialize those veterans from Operation Desert Storm, Iraqi Freedom, and Afghanistan, are we going to make sure it's politically correct or to dedicate a memorial that recognizes the hardship and the loss that these veterans endured?
I just want to take a moment to recognize what we have with us today. One of our council members, Christopher Beauchamp. I want to thank you for being here, Chris. State Senator Mark Cody is here as well. Just to, before I introduce the last speaker, I just want to, for those from the press, we do have copies of letters, our formal response to the FFRF are on the table up in front, along with a copy of their second letter to us that came recently, so that is available for those reporters. And we'll certainly be available, myself and Mr. Larisa will be available for some questions after if you would like that. The next person I'd like to bring up is somebody that is just such a great member of our community and has really stepped forward. And Jeanne Budnick, who is over at Pepin Lumber, and all of the Pepin family. For Mr. Pepin is here, I want to thank him for his service. So I want to call up Jeanne. Jeanne has been the chairperson of the Woonsocket War Memorial Committee that's been working to bring this monument back and to raise funds, all done with private funds again. And she and her family and so many volunteers have been in their back room putting crosses together, and they showed me their operation. It's really something that it's amazing to see how many crosses people can put together in honor of these veterans, and to see them popping up on lawns throughout the state. And I was down
It's a big time operation.
it is. It's amazing to see. And the most amazing thing was being down to South County and not all that long ago and driving down the street and seeing two of them on the street. And so this is really spreading throughout the state, and I think that we have a lot to thank to the Pepin family and all the people that have been helping them. So Jeanne.
Good afternoon. I will be brief. Thank you for the kind words, Mayor. I appreciate it. As you know, I'm the chairperson to the Woonsocket War Memorial Committee. It's a great committee. It's about the veterans, the monument. When Lorraine and I, Lorraine from Quarry, went to see the mayor, I want to say about maybe 3 months ago, we said, what can we do for you? You know, you have enough going on in the city that you don't need to be handling this, you know, the issues that are coming up. I mean, you had enough legal issues, so all the little things. Plus, you know, where I work at Pepin Lumber, we were getting people coming in and asking. So we kind of put our heads together. The primary goal to the committee is to assist the city in the maintenance, the repair, and the upkeep and the burden of all the war memorials. And we have some people on the committee now that are, as Ernie had mentioned, are already looking at some monuments that are kind of hidden and have been forgotten, so we'll be taking care of those as well. As you know, oh yeah, there it is. Nice pictures. We had a mason that I had known, and he had said, if you mention my name, or I see one camera, I'm gone. So I can't mention his name, but he did a great job. Resurfaced it. I had a private company, one of the veterans, Joe Gamache, went to scout out who we could have the plaques redone, and found the company. Turns out I knew the company, so we worked with the company in Manville. A local company that did a great job. So, you know, with that said, the War Memorial Committee is committed to preserve and protect the memorials in Woonsocket that were erected to honor the veterans and the fallen heroes. And our stance is not and will not change. So, you know, with that said, there's been a lot of great people. I should be mentioning a bunch of people, but it's about the monument. It's about the community. I have to say it's about the community, but I've got to admit, we've sold crosses throughout Rhode Island. So I'm proud to say, I mean, we've sold them, and my family is all here in Westerly, I mean, North Kingstown, Coventry, they're all over the place. We actually have them out of state. So, and again, it's about the monument. And when people come and purchase a cross, it's about the monument. And we can't say it enough. But, so once again, you know, I'm representing a great committee, but it's about the veterans, and we're proud to do this for the veterans. Let's face it, they have done so much for us.
As you can see, this is the monument before the crew got working, and then Here's a group of volunteers working, and there's what it looks like now. So. Before I go on, I just want to mention and recognize that we have a former colonel of the state police, Brendan Doherty, here. So I also want to take a moment to just thank so many people that have emailed and called from around the country. This monument has brought so much attention to our community and showed me that there are so many people that are good and understand the value of our veterans and the freedoms that we have. And we received emails and calls from really all over the country that, and just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. And the person I want to thank an awful lot is my fill-in assistant, Linda Plays, who is It's not easy answering all of those calls and emails, and we've actually passed on. The committee is going to be helping out. Dee is going to be helping out with responding to these, and so it's really something that is very heartwarming. Lastly, one of the things that I wanted to mention, as I've gone through and done the research and learned the history of this monument, it became so apparent what a valuable piece of our community's history this monument encompasses. And I wanted to make sure that two things happen. One, before all is said and done, we are going to have another monument right on the other side of this monument to Mrs. Gagne. I was talking to some people that said that they knew her, and I wish I would have. She died back in, I think, 1981, and but when you see somebody like that, it makes you realize how much one person can do despite long odds. So I just want to make it known that we're going to make sure that she's remembered, because I think she's one of the biggest heroes through all of this. The other thing that I did was we reached out to the Beacon Charter School, and they have agreed to have their students put together an exhibit that is going to be put on display here at the Museum of Work and Culture to recognize and show the history of Place Jalbert. And I want to thank Tina Goes here from the Beacon Charter School. And I want to thank Ray Bacon and the Museum of Work and Culture for hosting us here today. They do here at the museum, especially we have a whole wing dedicated to our veterans, and I think it shows what this community is all about and how important we hold our veterans. That being said, I'm going to wrap up with, we will take some questions if you have any. I was called the other day and somebody asked me, one of the reporters said, well, what would you say, because there's this FFRF has indicated that there was one person that called and that they were offended by this. They've never named the person, and they said, well, what would you say if you could be in touch with that person? And I said, you know, I respect anybody's feelings. I respect anybody's faith. We all have the right to our own feelings, our own faith and beliefs. But I would ask them, I would ask the representatives from the FFRF, and I would ask this individual, whoever it may be, if they're listening to us now, to please call me. Speak to the Jolliker family. Learn the history of this monument and understand the story behind this monument. It's more than a white cross. That white cross symbolizes the crosses on graves thousands of miles away. And it's the only gravesite that the Gagne family has to remember your lost loved one, Lewis, because he was lost at sea. So that's what I would ask if I had an opportunity to tell them. And that being said, I would ask Joe if he'd come up if there's any questions. I'd be happy to answer anything that I can.
One of the things that's been not mentioned today is the fact that the Bristol Parade had two facsimiles in the parade. Two groups built facsimiles of it through the parade.
That's actually, yes, they did. And as you're saying that, I heard about that, and Linda Plays, I said, Linda, we need to find that float. And I believe that we're going to have it in the Autumn Fest Parade. Yes, we do.
Mayor, I was listening to the House of Representatives yesterday, and there was a section in there with new legislation coming in about memorials and dedications like this. Now, that new legislation, is that going to be in effect going back, or is that going to be going into effect at that time? And how much teeth does that have to protect us and other neighbors?
Okay, I don't want to be accused of practicing law without a license again. So, I'm going to ask Joe to come up and address that. And the other thing I'm going to ask Joe to address as well, because this is one of the things that we found as everybody was first learning about this challenge. We received so many emails and calls of people suggesting something, and it was funny because it was the same thing that I had thought of at the very beginning of all of this, was whether or not this piece of property could be deeded over in the name of the Veterans Organization. Keep it where it is, as it is, in the name of the Veterans Organizations that actually erected the monument at the very beginning. And unfortunately, it's not as easy as that. There's actually been some cases similar to this that have become legal challenges, so it's not as easy, quite that simple. And so perhaps Joe can address the issue of legislation, because we do have state legislation that was recently passed as well as federal legislation, and he can address those issues.
On the state legislation, no legislation hurts the cause, but the state declaring a memorial secular or non-religious probably isn't going to play much of a role in the constitutional analysis of our memorial. And in fact, it's as we go through our own history, like I said, it doesn't hurt, but it's not necessary, and I'm not going to say it's not helpful. It doesn't hurt. It's not something that will help further the cause with respect to our memorial, not because it's not a good thing, but because we don't need it. Our memorial has an entire history of dedication to veterans and a complete lack of any historical purpose or context, starting from when the council first approved it, of this being a place of religious worship. On the issue, it was humorous, as the mayor points out, because at the beginning, everybody, all the rocket scientists, let's just give it to a veterans group and they can keep the cross. Well, it's not that simple. If there were an establishment clause problem and you tried to remedy it by doing that, let's assume that for a minute, even though there is none here, there's a whole Supreme Court case where it appears that at least 4 justices, and frankly, one of the circuit courts, the Ninth Circuit, would say that violates the Establishment Clause, because you have to, in their view anyway, hopefully 5 disagree with that, but it's never been formally decided. How do you do what we just said? How would you give that to a veterans group? Well, this is a municipality. Would you go out to competitive bid? Of course not. Would you allow a group that wants to take the memorial down to bid? Of course not. Well, then you can't do a competitive bid. So you're going to give it away or sole source it to a veterans group? And why? And then the question is why? Well, to keep the memorial there. Well, in the views of the FFRF and others, well, wait a second. So the city is actively promoting keeping the Christian symbol there by giving it away to a group that's going to keep it there. That's an Establishment Clause violation, and it appears at least some members of the Supreme Court. Again, I'm premising this that we have a problem. We don't. But that was the premise. Let's get rid of the problem by donating this. And it's fraught with a whole bunch of issues that frankly wouldn't necessarily get us anywhere. So it would never have been that easy as let's just give it away, because you have to figure out how would we get it to somebody and not have a claim that we're, as a city, establishing religion by trying to do that.
Any other questions?
When was your last correspondence from this group? And secondly, if they decide to drop this after educating themselves, will they formally let the city know?
Probably about 3 weeks ago, we got their second request. As far as whether or not they were to decide to drop the case and not move forward with it, I don't know if we would. Certainly, I don't think that they would be required to notify us by any stretch. Personally, I would like to open the mail one day and find the letter saying, "Thank you for educating us about the history of this monument, and good luck with preserving it." And that would be what I would do.
In the past, we've heard rumor that the person who filed a complaint, has to become knowledgeable to us if the suit does go through?
Again, it's a legal question. I believe that if the suit were filed, there would need to be a named plaintiff, and I think that person would need to be named on that suit if I'm not incorrect on this.
Lawyers are known for giving long answers. My answer to that is correct.
What if that individual does not want to be recognized?
I guess it would be up to them as to whether or not they would whether try to find somebody else or but it remains to be seen.
Not a question, Mayor, but I just wanted to recognize one of my colleagues in the Senate who came down to show his support, Senator Juan Pichardo, who's a U.S. Air Force National Guard retired.
Service as well. Any other questions?
The country was set up on majority rules. Every election, majority rules. How can one person, by our laws, one person create this much havoc, and why? That's a legal question.
I'll tell you. I don't know if I want to let the attorney go on that one. The thing is, I agree with you, Joe, but at the same point, as much as we can sit back and say that one person can create so much havoc, I would say that one person can do so much good. When you look at every one person in this room, we can pull together and show what this community is all about, and hopefully be able to say to our children and grandchildren, as they see that monument there for generations to come, what this community did to support our veterans and save that monument.
Again, there was a majority of people doing it. It's not a single person. All right? If he or she is offended by the cross or the monument, why can't I be offended at them for being a godless unit of people? How does that work out in the Constitution of the United States?
Well, first of all, as I always tell any client who says the suit against them is ridiculous, and a lot of times it is that under our laws, anybody can sue anyone for anything at any time. So the question really isn't, can they sue me? The question is, can they win? Because that can always happen. The question is, how soon can you win? Can you win immediately? In this case, will they even bring suit at all? So yes, somebody can sue, but like you said, you have your view, they have their view. And in this case, there's allegedly one person, we don't even know who that is, and as the mayor has pointed out several times today, that has brought out a response under our First Amendment of thousands and thousands of people, and have educated everybody who didn't know, which is all of us pretty much, to a real life, as the mayor put it, saving Private Ryan, and I guess she's going to get her own monument. So that's the response.
When we prevail on this, do we have to sue them?
Well, that's a good question.
Well, we can't. If they bring a case, and I'm hopeful they won't, but if they do bring a case, we can ask for, they'll bring it under what's called Section 1983 for a constitutional violation. It'll be brought in federal court, and if they prevail, they'll ask for attorney's fees, and we're entitled to, if we prevail, to ask for attorney's fees. The difficulty is they just have to win to get them. We have to show that their complaint was unfounded and frivolous. But after the research the mayor and this group has done and what we're putting together, I think it's a pretty close call as to whether, if they did bring suit, once they read the memo and the letter and look through the history, it is frivolous. And so the answer to your question is, can we counter-sue? No. Can we try to get attorney's fees back from them? Yes. Will we be successful in doing that? Maybe.
I just want to thank everybody again for coming. To all of the veterans that are here, thank you for your service. God bless America.